Hi guys, in this video we will discuss a new series from Netflix called Black Knight. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and turn on the bell. Without further delay, let's just go straight to the storyline. The story is set in 2071 where 40 years ago a meteorite crashed into the Earth. Since then most of the continent has sunk. The Korean peninsula turned into a desert and left only 1% of the human population. Because of the polluted air, an air core was created that can convert oxyanium into oxygen, thus requiring everyone to wear limited oxygen masks. In addition, due to scarce human resources, the government began to use the QR code work system to categorize which survivors are suitable to become general survivors, special survivors and core survivors. However, survivors who are not selected are called refugees. They lived miserably due to lack of oxygen and starvation. Eventually some refugees turned into hunters and looters. A courier is assigned to distribute oxygen and supplies so that the survivors can survive. A courier nicknamed 528 was crossing the desert to distribute oxygen, but as the hunters attacked him, 528 had to slaughter them all. 528's skills were so famous among the refugees that many of them wanted to become couriers. Moreover, the only hope for refugees is to become a courier. Yoon Sa-Wol was confronted by a number of hunters who wanted to steal his oxygen. Because his colleagues were only hiding in the car, Sa-Wol went alone to face them. After Sa-Wol managed to conquer all the hunters, his colleagues came out to take the oxygen masks that Sa-Wol brought for them. Switching to the general district, where 528 is delivering oxygen supplies, he gets an emergency call. Apparently a central courier was robbed by a number of hunters, but when the hunters were about to cut off the courier's hand to take the QR code, along with that, 528 came. Then 528 came down to warn them to stay alive as refugees rather than die as hunters. Unfortunately these hunters fought back, so a fight was inevitable, as an experienced and legendary courier known as the 5-8 Knight easily slaughtered them all. After that he ordered the courier to leave. At night Sa-Wol returned to the general district. On the way he saw the officers arresting a refugee who was smuggled in by a survivor of the general district. When Sa-Wol tried to infiltrate a cabin, a soldier named Sola suddenly pointed a gun at him, but Sa-Wol quickly fought back and a fight ensued, but Sola easily defeated him. In this cabin also lived a girl named Seula, so Sa-Wol is a refugee who was smuggled by them. Because she was caught out, Sola warned Sa-Wol that their district surveillance was getting tighter, so if Sa-Wol is caught they will be punished. But Sa-Wol argued that he was just practicing to become a courier. Hearing that, of course Sola became even angrier. As a result, Sa-Wol was banned from going out for 15 days. At the same time 5-8 received a message, asking him to come somewhere. The next day a man named Ryusuk arrived at the core district. The core district looked very much different from the general district, because this district is very beautiful with lush plants and magnificent buildings. The president and the central director discussed the problem of overcrowding in the special district. The president had a plan to relocate the refugees in the special district and asked to immediately complete the construction of the district. Not long after, Ryusuk arrived. As the person responsible for building the distribution line, Ryusuk was reprimanded for the delayed completion, while the construction of District A is almost completed. After the president leaves, Ryusuk, who is the son of the director, reveals that the government is always intervening in their work, but his father reminds him that all the districts are his work, so he asks Ryusuk to obey orders. Meanwhile, Sa-Wol, who is being punished, sneaks out of the district again, and heads to the refugee camp to invite his friends to rob a supply truck. As soon as a truck passes, Sa-Wol and his friends immediately take action, but they didn't know that the truck was driven by 5-8. When they realized the presence of the children, 5-8 deliberately played with them, by making the truck swerve. After being satisfied, 5-8 also electrocuted them, but Sa-Wol managed to rush into the steering room. Seeing that it was 5-8 later made Sa-Wol dumbfounded, but 5-8 who felt disturbed immediately pulled Sa-Wol out of the truck. 5-8 finally arrived at the promised place, namely Gate 8 District A. From there, a truck carrying core water was seen. While inside the district, Sa-Wol was assigned to investigate the project that was being carried out, but the officer forbade him to enter because he did not have permission from the director. On the way back, they almost hit the 5-8 truck which was still parked outside the gate. When they went out to check, 5-8 showed up. Knowing they were military intelligence, 5-8 claimed to have gotten lost in the storm and left the truck to relieve himself. After verifying 5-8's identity, Solaw asked him to leave the place immediately. Meanwhile, Sawol returns to the cabin, and as he enters the room, Seulaw immediately locks him up. At the same time, 5-8 stopped at the refugee district. There he saw a girl who had run out of oxygen, so quickly replaced her tube. In the child's hand was a manual for becoming a courier. Without knowing who was in front of her, the girl said she wanted to be a courier like 5-8, so she could help the refugees. She even had a hat numbered 5-8, from which 5-8 told the man the core water that had been brought to District A and asked the man to infiltrate there. Not only 5-8, but there were a number of people who were also helping the refugees like him. 5-8 then delivered the supply to Seulaw. Knowing that the one who came was 5-8, of course Seulaw became very happy. After 5-8 left, someone turned off the district CCTV. Shortly after that, it seemed to get another delivery. Once the door was opened, it turned out that what came was a group of armed people, who immediately tried to inject it. Seeing this, Sawol tried to break down the door. Hearing the sound from the door, the robbers immediately fired, so that chaos ensued. After successfully eliminating the 3 robbers, Sawol found that one of them was hit by a gunshot. Unfortunately, a man also shot Sawol in the head. After a while, 5-8 saw someone rushing out of the Seulaw cabin and also the sound of gunshots. He rushed there and met an unknown man. After eliminating the man, 5-8 entered and found a messy condition. He also found Seulah's body. Upon seeing the marks on Sawol's body, 5-8 realized that she was a smuggled refugee. Therefore, 5-8 immediately reported the incident. Seeing Sawol's finger still moving, 5-8 realized that he was the one who broke into her truck. 5-8 rushed to take him away and contacted a courier to help him. After that, Solaw and some soldiers arrived at the scene. Solaw invited the soldiers to carry Seulah's body away, to do a scan and make a simulation of the incident. Since they knew Solaw had smuggled a refugee, Solaw was willing to be fired, but the soldiers sided with her. After the departure of the military forces, Solaw was reminded of the past when she saved Sawol when she was about to be killed by the military. At the same time, Sawol wakes up in cabin 5-8. There a courier nicknamed 4-1 had helped treat her. Sawol insisted on going to Seulaw, who was already dead, forced 5-8 to ask 4-1 to sedate him. 4-1 then gave the bullet that he managed to remove from Sawol. According to him, Sawol's skull bone had saved his life. While examining Sawol's body, 5-8 realized that her leg bones were not like human bones. Some time passed and 5-8 was called to the special district to be examined by Solaw. She explained that at the time of the incident the district CCTV was off and the cabin memory card was also missing. In the incident it was discovered that her sister had deliberately opened the door, so it could be assumed that the perpetrator was a soldier's family or a courier. However, he denied this because he arrived at the scene after the incident was over. Besides, the soldiers had already simulated the event, so there was nothing to ask. But Solaw asked again, why 5-8 left before the soldiers arrived. Hearing that 5-8, who knew the purpose of the question was to find out Sawol's whereabouts, then he said that there was an important delivery, so he had to leave the scene immediately. After the interrogation, Solaw returned to the cabin and found Sawol sitting in the room reminiscing. Sawol admitted that she could not remember the events that happened. Knowing that Sawol often meets her friends at the refugee camp, then Solaw no longer forbids him to go. Sawol tells her that she doesn't dislike the place, but rather feels bad for those who continue to protect her. Before Sawol left, Solaw gave her a necklace that made Sawol cry, remembering Solah's sacrifice for saving and taking care of her for 10 years. At night, Sawol, who felt guilty for Solah's death, he decided to go to the hunters he had beaten and asked them to finish him off. Hearing that, they immediately beat Sawol mercilessly. Seeing Sawol being beaten, Sawol's 3 friends immediately stopped them. The next day the government sent soldiers to the refugee district, to look for construction workers, who would be given oxygen and food for a year after the work was completed. Knowing workers are needed for the construction of District A, then 5-8 asked his friend to stall the construction. As a result, he decided to get into the bus to work. Sawol was taken by his friends in an unconscious condition. Meanwhile, the courier 5-7 admitted that he could no longer carry out the kidnapping, the general district residents and refugees to Ryusuk, because he heard rumors about experiments on kidnapped people, but Ryusuk offers that if 5-7 is willing to do it, then he will become a core district citizen forever. At the same time, 5-8's fellow couriers managed to track down the kidnapper's location, with the help of a teenager who was willing to become a victim. Then at night they carried out the attack. In one room, they found the victims lying on a bed, all of them children. They immediately rescued the victims. After a few days of treatment, Sawol regained consciousness and still remembered Sola. Director Yu called his son, because he heard the murder case that happened in the general district from the president. The director explained to Ryusuk that he built the district and air corps to save the people, so he distrusted the leaders including Ryusuk, who will inherit his creation. Ryusuk assured that one day the father will recognize him again. Grandfather tried to comfort and advise Sawol not to be sad anymore. Elsewhere, Ryusuk is being treated. It turns out that he is suffering from a disease that requires him to receive regular blood transfusions. It's likely that the blood came from the kidnapped children. 5-8 meets Sawol's grandfather and asks if Sawol is with him. 5-8 also shows the bullet removed from Sawol's head. According to her, Sawol is immune to bullets and recovers quickly. 5-8 asks if Grandpa knows Sawol is a mutant. Grandpa revealed that Sawol's father used to work in the oxyanium mine and lived in a radioactive area. Then 5-8 tells if 100 refugee children are missing. Kidnappings started happening in the general district. The children were Sawol's age and asked Sawol to go with them, but begged Sawol to stay here, because Sawol's body, heart and mind are still messed up. At her office Sola found the access to the public district blocked. Solah's Manly explained that the minister had separated the general district cases from their command, due to the sibling relationship between Suala and Sola, but they had backed up the data in advance, so the evidence of the murder and kidnapping cases, as well as the data of the couriers are still in their possession. That's why they asked for a day off after the case was over. Upon hearing the word holiday, one realized something while accessing the courier's data. They discovered that courier 5-7 was on leave when the incident occurred. This answered why 5-8 was assigned to deliver supplies that day. At the logistics base 5-8 was going home. He saw the back door of 5-7's truck open. On checking, he was so stunned to see 5-7 hanging that he rushed to her aid. 5-7 later admitted that the kidnapping in the general district was his doing. It's just that he didn't know who the people with him were. He only knew the children were kidnapped for experiments. Unfortunately, 5-7 had not yet revealed where the children were taken. He was executed first. It turns out that this was Ryusuk's doing because 5-7 refused to kidnap again. Ryusuk, who knew Suala was Solah's younger brother, asked his assistant named O if Suala was among their targets. Mr. O informed that Suala was born before the oxyanium mine case happened. This revealed that the kidnapping targets were children born before the mine case. However, Ryusuk felt O was slow to report and intended to finish him off. For that O immediately apologized and promised not to repeat it again. Lucky Ryusuk still gave him a chance, then to divert the issue of murder in the general district. Then Ryusuk again planned something. The couriers who watched 4-1 fight. After 4-1 defeated his opponent, a courier challenged 5-8, but with just one punch, 5-8 manages to knock out the courier. In the refugee district, the soldiers distributed flyers for recruitment of new couriers. Sawol's friend who found the flyer immediately brought it to Sawol, making Sawol excited. When 5-8 started his work, he saw Sawol standing against the truck. Instead of stopping, 5-8 hit the gas. Flashback to 9 years ago, 5-8, who was still a refugee, found his district attacked by soldiers. For this reason, he went forward to attack them. After a long battle, 5-8 finally managed to eliminate most of the soldiers, but 2 soldiers shot him in the back. The bodies of the refugees were then collected in a pit to be burned. However, the soldiers did not realize that 5-8 was still alive. Upon finding a weapon from the body of one of the refugees, 5-8 quickly used it to finish off the remaining soldiers. Back to the present in high speed, 5-8 aimed his truck at Sawol. Just as the truck approached, Sawol immediately threw himself to the ground to avoid the collision. When 5-8 got down, Sawol immediately showed the courier recruitment flyer he got and expressed his readiness to take the test. So asked 5-8 to teach him how to win. Initially 5-8 refused but heard Sawol, who remembered 5-8 had helped him, so 5-8 asked Sawol to prove himself. On the appointed day and place, back 9 years ago after the death of thousands of refugees, 58 was determined to take revenge on director Ryu, who was the brain of the massacre, so decided to join as a courier. Salah received a report that 5-8 along with 11 couriers from the refugee district gathered at the sports gym. Salah ordered the troops to prepare for an ambush. 5-8 went to the sports gym and met his fellow couriers who had gathered. They talked about the kidnapping case. The target of the kidnapping victims are mining children, who according to 5-8 are mutants. To prove his words, 5-8 showed a picture of Saul while still injured. Saul's bones are made of metal, and recover quickly. They plan to use Saul as bait to find the location of the other missing children. While the conversation is going on, 5-8 hears a sound. For that he immediately opens the door, making Sula and his partner surprised. Inside are the couriers pretending to be practicing. Sula asks 58 to speak. Sula tells him that on the day of his sister's death, 5-7 was on leave. It's possible that he's a key in the guise of a courier, so his sister who saw the arrival of 5-7 did not suspect anything and opened the door. But 5-7 died during the examination due to exhaustion. Sula didn't believe the results of the examination. 5-8 revealed that 5-7 died in front of him when a small bomb embedded in the back of 5-7's head exploded. 5-8 also shows a picture of the tattoo on the nape of the neck. The next day Saul went to the place written by 5-8. There 5-8 and 41 were waiting for her. Without much talk 5-8 immediately asked Saul to show her martial arts skills. After playing around for a while 5-8 finally unleashed a punch that immediately knocked Saul down. Finally 5-8 asked Saul to use her brain before registering as a courier. Ryusuk announced the recruitment of couriers to the citizens, but only one person will be selected. After that, the residents of the district began to register. Saul and her friends tried to apply, but only Saul passed the motor selection and got number 3-4. Then Saul was trained again by 5-8 and other couriers. This time it was agility training. The first round of selection turned out to be a randomized fight in a room with limited oxygen. Is a random battle in a room with limited oxygen levels. With the hard training he went through, Saul managed to beat all the contestants in his room. But after completion the partition between the rooms opened where there were 8 winners who still had to compete in the second selection. Sula went to the refugee district and asked a refugee whose child was kidnapped to find a person who has a tattoo on the nape of the neck and spread the picture of the tattoo. At night 5-8 and his team ambushed the workers' car. After the guards were eliminated the workers were released. 5-8's partner explained that the project work had been completed and would be taken to the oxyanium mine. It's just that he managed to apply as a refugee caretaker. He also informed that the core water operational test would be conducted. Upon hearing that, 5-8 asked him to try to buy some time. To remove suspicion 5-8 was forced to shoot his hand. The next day the news of the work's release reached Ryusuk's ears. Not long after, Sola met with Ryu to explain that the District A project was 90% complete and that after the project was finished, the residents of the special and general districts would be relocated. For this reason, he asks Sola for data on each district so that the relocation of residents can be done fairly. In the sports atmosphere Saul informs her that she passed the first round of selection. For the second round of training Saul must practice extreme driving. Before the selection, the officer explains that their job is to deliver the package to the finish line safely. However, they will have to face hunters with criminal histories and any hunter who manages to snatch the package from them will be released. So they were allowed to use any weapon to fight the poachers and defend the package with their lives. The selection was witnessed by the couriers and Ryu himself. After a while the second round began. On the way the hunters began to act so that chaos could not be avoided. One by one the participants fell but Saul still survived. But unfortunately, a car hit her upside down. But Saul doesn't give up. She runs with the package. On the way he saw the car of one of the participants who collapsed. Saul helped him. But in the middle of his efforts a number of hunters attacked them. Luckily Saul managed to push the car so that both of them could survive. The hunters jumped over the car and attacked them. As a result of this Saul's partner bounced out. In a confused position Saul saw a participant pass and reach the finish line safely. Watching her partner being surrounded Saul, who should have been able to get second place, finally decided to retreat to save her partner. Once he saved her partner, Saul rushed her car to the finish line. The second position is occupied by Saul and her partner. Since only 2 winners were required, Saul was disqualified on the grounds that she lost her car and the package was damaged. 4-1 informed 5-8 that the second place winner withdrew due to a broken hand. Therefore, the couriers proposed Saul to enter the finals. Ryusuk, who heard the news from O, disagreed because it gives hope for the refugees to ruin their plans. But Ryu didn't want to ruin his image as a result. The next day the officer was sent to give Saul a graduation bracelet. This suddenly made them all happy. At the same time Sola shows Ryu the data on the gender, age and oxygen consumption of the district's residents. But Ryu explains that such basic data is already known to them, so he asked for each resident's personal data such as intelligence, strength, occupation, criminal record, DNA and all medical records. Sola explains that personal data is a top secret. It's related to human rights, so it can't be given without official permission from the Minister of Defense. Ryu directly contacted the minister, making Sola unable to refuse Ryusuke's request. Although she felt that the relocation done by selection was unfair, Sola gets news of a tattooed person in the refugee district, so rushes there. Sola ordered her men to prepare an ambush. Realizing that the middle is being followed, the tattooed man rushes away. It turns out that he ambushed Sola, who tried to chase him. Soleil's men surrounded him. Feeling trapped, the man immediately killed himself using the bomb at the nape of his neck. They got a cell phone from the man's pocket. The next day Saul was taken to the special district. He had to live in a dormitory and was supervised by a mentor who turned out to be 4-1. Since that day the footage of their fight was continuously broadcasted to the residents. 5-8 and his comrades prepared to hijack the logistics vehicle transporting the power plant for District A. Once the convoy stopped due to being intercepted by 5-8, they immediately attacked. After that they planted a bomb on the power plant and it exploded. After a while, Ryu, who got the news, remembered his conversation with his father, where his father found out he had asked Sola for people's personal data. According to his father, he couldn't just throw away a weak person. His father was angry. He explained that saving 1% of Koreans was a tough decision, so now he doesn't want to make the same mistake. He insists that all living people will be relocated and the government will lead the relocation plan, but Ryu refused to relocate the refugees on the grounds of insufficient oxygen production. After that memory, Ryu went to a room filled with tubes containing abductees. Ryu deliberately raised the oxygen level so that the people inside died. He planned to finish off all the refugees. The next day a number of broadcast trucks were sent to the refugee district to broadcast live the final courier selection battle. In order to increase the enthusiasm of the audience, the company also provided food and oxygen for them. This was deliberately ordered by Ryu to divert attention so that the execution mission against the refugees could still be carried out. A courier told 5-8 that he came across a black sedan with no license plate. It may contain a tattooed man who will kidnap the children. Soon 5-8 also saw the sedan in question. He immediately confronted them and attacked them and a battle ensued. After eliminating all of them, except for one person, 5-8 immediately took out the bomb embedded in the nape of his neck. At the same time Saul entered the arena. After the two respected each other, then the fight was carried out. Long enough to fight, the first round is finally won by the opponent. Apparently Saul deliberately let herself be beaten to find out the strength of her opponent. Meanwhile, in the refugee district, a tattooed man standing among the audience returns to the arena, where the second round is held. In this round Saul leaves her opponent exhausted. 5-8 tries to interrogate the tattooed man he captured. The man's cell phone contains a message about the planned execution of refugees watching the match. This makes 58 realize that the refugees were deliberately lured together. Back at the arena, Ryu, who realizes the match is about to end, orders Ah to complete his plan. At the same time Lee gave a message about the execution plan of the refugees from 5-8. Meanwhile, 5-8 calls their team to go to the refugee district. As the third round progressed, Saul was born launching her attack. As a result, a devastating blow knocked out her opponent. During the victory celebration, Ryu realizes Saul's skull bone is made of metal. At the same time, the execution of the refugees was carried out. 5-8 arrived late only to find the refugees had been reduced to ashes. At night Sola and her troops also arrived at the scene. They realized the broadcast was just a lure. Meanwhile, 5-8's colleagues interrogated their captive, but this man remains silent. A doctor examines Saul and gives her a QR code as 5-7. At that moment, Ryu and Oh are watching Saul's body scans. He was surprised to find out that Saul was a mutant. It looks like Saul has a healthy physical condition. It's just that they can't immediately do the experiment, because many are watching Saul. 5-8 then meets Sola to show the man they captured. Seeing the wound on the man's forehead, Sola assured he had undergone brain surgery that eliminated emotions when killing or committing suicide. 5-8 also shows the cell phone containing the kidnapping data he got. But the file on the cell phone was locked, so he asks Sola to try to open it, in order to find out about the next plan, and who their leader is. Meanwhile Saul returns to her new cabin, where she also gets a tool that contains a courier guide. But due to fatigue Saul falls asleep. When she woke up she saw Sola. Sola reminds her that Ryu's side is very interested in mutants, so she asked Saul to be careful. That day Saul did her first task. She tried to talk to 5-8, but 5-8 asked her to meet after work. Elsewhere, director Ryu Jae-jin calls Ryu sick because he suspects his son is the brains of the bombing of the refugees, but Ryu refused to explain on the grounds that his father did not trust anyone. Therefore, the director planned to speed up the relocation of the remaining refugees. Ryu claims to have amended the district relocation plan and will talk to the president. At night Sawol went to see 5-8. There Sawol was surprised to see the man who was arrested by 5-8. He explained that the man was Sewell Ah.'s murderous accomplice, and told that when Sawol fought hundreds of refugees were killed by Ryu, it was done because Ryu didn't want to relocate the refugees to the district, and this is the main purpose of them becoming couriers in Ryu's company. After telling all that, 5-8 offers Sawol to join them. Sola, meanwhile, handed over the residents' personal data to Ryu. Sola also offered to help check the health of the refugees. The next day Sola meets with 5-8 to hand back the cell phone that has been successfully opened. According to Sola, there was no evidence of Ryu or his company's involvement. There wasn't even any information about the next plan. Sola also informed that Ryu had backed out of the relocation plan, so the implementing government will conduct medical tests on the refugees who will enter the general district. It's just that 5-8 doesn't believe Ryu gave up that easily. After that, medical tests and vaccinations were conducted on the refugees. At night a number of people infiltrated the sports gym to rescue the captured man, but they were met with fierce resistance from the couriers on guard. Unfortunately the man managed to escape. He then stopped at a building and sent out a distress call. Not long ago also appeared there. This man claimed to be held by 5-8 and the couriers, but he was saved by the rescue squad. Hearing this O of course became surprised because he felt he didn't send anyone. Suspecting that this was a trap, he immediately finished the man, and sure enough when O was about to leave, along with it also 5-8 appeared in front of him. It turns out that the couriers deliberately released the man in order to get a clue. Then Sola also appeared, after making sure in the nape of O there is a bomb. Then Sola immediately handcuffed and threatened to arrest him. Sola knew that if O was caught then Ryu would detonate the bomb at the nape of his neck to eliminate the trail. Sola needs O to prove Ryu guilty. Because O is too wordy then 5-8 threatens to finish him right then and there. O was forced to cooperate with them. The next day, Grandpa asks 5-8 about the condition of the general district. He explained that people there can only breathe for 10 minutes without an oxygen mask. Elsewhere Ryu tested a Sawol blood sample on a patient like himself, where the test results showed a change in skin color that returned to normal. At the same time 5-8 ordered the couriers to inspect the air purification trucks that were traveling around various sectors of the general district. After the inspection, they were shocked to find out that the trucks were emitting harmful substances. They gathered and concluded that Ryo-suk's company was deliberately polluting the air in the public district, because if the air was clean he wouldn't be in power. Sola comes and tells them of Ryo-suk's planned visit to the refugee district, so they prepared to attack. In a building 5-8 prepare to execute Ryo-suk who is escorted by a number of guards. The others attacked the air purification station. After retrieving the data, they immediately blew up the control machine which eventually extinguished the air purification truck. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, Ryu-suk's men arrived. He drew his gun first, but unexpectedly 5-8's colleagues who were in the opposite building finished off the man. They started attacking and chaos ensued. In the middle of the battle 5-8 realized O betrayed. He decided to go down to pursue Ryu-suk. Unfortunately O first took Ryu-suk away from that place using a bulletproof car. Meanwhile Sola meets director Ryu Jae-jin. Sola showed data explaining that their company was involved in the kidnapping case, bombing the refugee district, and polluting substances. Upon hearing that, director Ryu Jae-jin asks if he needs to step in to clean it up, but Sola explains, as an officer she needs accurate evidence. Along with that, he was informed that 5-8's attack on Ryu-suk was discovered. Elsewhere, O revealed to Ryu-suk that all the chaos that happened to their plans so far was the work of their own couriers. Even the newly recruited Sawol was involved. At the sports gym, Sola explained to the couriers that director Ryu Jae-jin has been informed, so the director will meet the president. But for the time being the couriers must hide until a decision is made, because if they keep moving then a great chaos can happen. 5-8 asked the couriers to split up. To do so they dumped all the GPS in the truck, then go in different directions. Ryu-suk and his troops came to the sports gym to look for the 5-8 group. Seeing that the building was empty, Ryu-suk ordered them to finish off the couriers, but Sawol who is a mutant must be captured alive. Elsewhere, director Ryu meets grandpa. Here it is revealed that they are old friends. They used to work together to build the district. It's just that grandfather decided to resign from the company. Grandpa showed that the plants have started to grow. In addition, the land in the south is getting fertile with the air getting better too, so they no longer need to live in the special district and the underground core. Upon hearing that, director Ryu was determined to put an end to his son's mistakes. 5-8 met the janitor who handed over the data regarding the vaccines given to the residents of the evacuation district. Seeing the data, 5-8 was shocked. Apparently the vaccine was a poison that killed the refugees who had received it. Meanwhile, director Ryu and the president signed an agreement, handover of Population Relocation Authority, so the government is officially in charge of the relocation. When the president was about to leave, Ryusuk confronted him, but the president insists that director Ryu will announce their deal soon. So Ryusuk had to say goodbye. Hearing that, he rushed to see his father. Ryusuk expressed his disappointment because oxygen and logistics were the heart of their company, but the director who knew what his son had done, he said his goal was to help people instead of killing them. His father also emphasized that the company is his, so he has the right to make any decision. Then the Minister of Defense came and ordered his men to arrest Ryusuk, but unexpectedly Ryusuk killed the 2 soldiers. Then he asked his father to finish him, because he'd rather die than lose the company. When the director was about to pull the trigger, suddenly the Minister of Defense shot director Ryu Jae-jin. It turned out that he betrayed and sided with Ryusuk, so after killing the director, the Minister of Defense suggested that Ryusuk stage a coup. The next day Ryusuk announced that the terrorists, namely the couriers who committed the murder, would lift them. As a result of this, the distribution of logistics to the entire district had to be stopped by the company until the terrorists were caught. On hearing that 5-8 plans to go to the core district to finish off Ryusuk, grandfather gave them the blueprint of the core district, which he made with director Ryu. At the same time the soldiers start searching for the 12 couriers who are considered terrorists. Meanwhile, Grandpa sees more and more citizens dying after receiving the vaccine. When he realizes 2 of Sawul's colleagues are also waiting in line to receive the vaccine, finally one of her friends rushes over there, while Grandpa immediately rang the bell to give a warning. Knowing that 4-1 informed the other couriers, they all went to the vaccine administration site, where Sawul's colleague who tried to warn his colleagues was immediately arrested by the soldiers. Witnessing that, a courier who had arrived there immediately opened fire, so chaos ensued. Sawul's friend who saw Sawul running towards her tried to stop her, but the soldiers immediately shot her. Sawul ran over to her dead friend, as she grieved and mourned her friend's death. The soldiers beat her to a pulp and took her away. At the military headquarters, Lee informs Sola about Sawul's arrest. The soldiers are willing to help Sola. Elsewhere, the central couriers prepare weapons to rescue Sawul. As they're about to leave, Sola and the soldiers who will participate in the mission suddenly arrive, while Sawul is in the place of Ryusuk and given anesthesia so as not to resist. At night, the artificial moon in the core district explodes, where at the same time the Team 5-8 attacked. In the middle of the battle, the soldiers who were the leaders came to help, so the battle became even more intense. In the room, Ryusuk is receiving Sawul's blood transfusion directly. Not long from that, Ryusuk's men showed the attack carried out by Team 5-8 and the army. Team 5-8 who managed to enter immediately extinguished the electricity, then attacked O and his bodyguards. Meanwhile, Sol AH's troops who wanted to save the president must face fellow soldiers. Ryusuk watched 5-8 who managed to enter the tube area. 5-8 who saw it immediately rushed to Ryusuk. Sola who managed to defeat the soldiers immediately entered the room. There is the president and defense minister facing each other. For treason, the minister was arrested. Realizing himself in a state of distress, Ryusuk increases the energy supply on the air core with the intention of blowing it up, but at the same time 5-8 entered the room and eliminated all the guards. Seeing that, Ryu immediately broke the control and threatened to finish off Sawul, but Sao's hand accidentally moved the wheelchair, thus distracting Ryu. In this opportunity 5-8 quickly used to finish off Ryu. Meanwhile, chaos broke out in the core district as residents ran around in panic to save themselves. Team 5-8 rescued all the kidnapped children and brought them out of the core district. A huge explosion occurred. Fortunately, the residents made it out safely. The president further announced that all residents would be relocated to District O without exception. The government also abolished the classification system of general, special and core refugees, so there was no more discrimination. 3 months later 5-8 returned to his duties as a courier. He took Sawul, who was not yet on duty, for a walk. On the way, Sawul noticed that the air was getting better and the sunlight was beginning to break through the fog. With this, a new era of human life will begin. Okay, thank you for watching until the end of the video. Apologize if there are any mistakes. See you again in the next video. For those of you who want to request comments below, hopefully entertained, healthy always, and see you.